I'm gonna still play around with it. Just you got people in the waiting room.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. What we're gonna do, we're gonna record it. We're gonna put it on our Facebook Live page.
Okay.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulih sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And Ramadan Mubarak. So for today, or for our Ramadan session, it brings me great pleasure to introduce one of my mentors, a friend, and also my brother in Islam, Imam or Sheikh Faheem Shuaibe. And I thought I would say that now so I can give him his roses now. So for those who don't know Imam Faheem Shuaibe, he's a resident Imam at Masjid Worthy in Oakland, California. He is a lifelong foremost student of Imam Worthy Muhammad. May Allah have mercy on his soul and grant him paradise. As a subject matter expert of Imam Muhammad's knowledge body, he brings the insights of Imam Muhammad's understandings and perceptions of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet and the social sciences to modernity. Imam Faheem Shuaibe is the author of 2 recent books. The first one is The Reality of Our Sacred Human Nature, Our Origins, and Our Destiny. And then his most recent book is A Clear Path to Human Development, Human Science in Scriptural Language, that he will be presenting for us for our Ramadan session. So with further to do, join me as I welcome Imam Faheem Shuaibe. Takbir!
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir! Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, dear beloved brothers and sisters, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Can you hear me okay? Assalamu alaikum. Now, I did, just FYI, I went ahead and lit up my Facebook Live, and I have people there and present. I need to let the people Facebook's Live on my side to know that while I'm kind of talking to the screen, I'm speaking to the Salaam Islamic Center in Raleigh, particularly. This is their session, and I'm joining them. I don't have the pay grade to be able to make sure that mine gets to yours. So if you all, I know we're friends, and I think I have it public. So if there's a way for her to grab my Facebook and share it, then she can do that. But we're gonna go on. This is a 2-hour session as scheduled. And what we're going to do, there's so much to address. We are addressing from this book as a source, The Clear Path to Human Development, Human Science and Scriptural Language. So the entitlement for the Ramadan session here is only the subtitle, Human Science and Scriptural Language, and that essentially is what we're going to talk about. And my hope is, just in a very brief review, in preparation for today, I think we might get through Adam. We know that in the book is really grounded in the Isra wa Mi'raj, which is often called the night journey of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so that's all 7. So that's the whole thing. So obviously we couldn't cover the whole thing in a couple of hours. Nevertheless, I think it's quite satisfying to simply do the one Adam if we get to it. But even if we don't cover Adam, if the principle that we lead with is to recognize that what the role of scriptural language, and that's really where we're going to go ahead and begin, actually with the scriptural language. So, Bismillah. Imam Muhammad, mashallah, Imam Muhammad is the cornerstone for our thinking, and it's. I know most of you on this line. I certainly would be wrong to say 100%, but I know that most of you, 99.9% of you on there, are people who subscribe to the language of Imam Muhammad, to the extent of your knowing and your capacity. And so I'm comfortable in this audience to begin there, as opposed to starting out with recitation from Quran or starting out with some particular hadith or what have you, because the frame of reference that I want you to have in mind as we continue is the language of Imam Muhammad. And so we'll take every opportunity to draw those lessons that will enable us to have more of the Imam's maxims, postulates, principles in our minds as we go through. I know you're going to allow me to kind of relax a little bit, because this is an important way. You know, I'm a little, strictly amateur chess player. All right, strictly amateur chess player. I have a better than average rating, if I do say so myself, but I still have some growing to do. This is no boast. But what I found about myself is, when you study it a little bit, you don't just play, but you study it a little bit, then I have found that just one little phrase or statement or idea related to a particular way of looking at the board can upgrade your game. It can upgrade your game in unbelievable ways, meaning, I say, in very satisfying ways. Okay, so one of them, I'll just mention it, is muting the white pawn in the Ruy Lopez. Now, if you don't know that, then it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, the point is, if you could look at the board in the way, there's a move that's made with the white bishop against you. You're playing black. Against you, that's attacking. I believe it's called the F7 square for you. So it's going to be difficult for me to do what I do with sound in the background. So minimize that, please. So you move your pawn. I believe is in front of your king, the black king, to what is called mute, to mute the bishop, right? Maybe it's a little complicated. Obviously, it's going to be complicated if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying to you is that every time somebody makes that move, all I have to do is remind myself about that idea, and that's done. But before that, if I didn't understand that the F7 square for black is a weakness, then I can always get played off through just that part of it. And that's so infinitesimally a small part of the whole game, but as it relates to your game, it's like it can save you a whole lot of thinking. What am I going to do about that? No, every time they make that move, you make that move, and that's that. Go on with the game. So what I'm saying is that it's the simple principles, simple but powerful principles, that make you better at whatever it is that you're trying to be better at. They're ideas. And do you understand is that you're playing a game? Everything you're doing, it is a game in that sense, but not in the leisure pleasure kind of sense, but it is a paradigm. There's a format, there's a formula, there's a territory, there's a particular problem that's trying to be solved in that. And the more you understand about quote unquote, the nature of your game, then so I hope you understand. Politics is a game. Business is a game. Culture is a game. Education is a game. Everything that human beings, actually one of our names as human beings it's called Homo ludens. Homo ludens. Homo ludens means the game playing creature. Homo ludens. So the point is, the more you understand about the nature of games, that's why the person got the Nobel Prize for game theory, right? So it's like, it's a game, but it's serious. It's a game that is serious, and that's everything. Life is a game that is serious. Okay, so scriptural logic, scriptural reading, learning and understanding what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, that's a game. That's a game. Now, understand, do not take this word in the course of this conversation unless I say so. Now I'm talking about that pejorative idea about, he ran the game. No, I'm not even talking about it. I'm trying to avoid even talking about that aspect of it at all. But it is a game. It is a game. And Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, he has given us keys to the scriptural game. Keys to the scriptural game. You need to make a note of that mentally, physically, or somehow. He's given us keys to the mental game, because it's a game that's being played by everybody that reads or teaches scripture. Everybody. Muslim scholars, Christian scholars, preachers, imams, bishops, cardinals, whoever. People with different ministries, etc. It's the scriptural game. It's the scriptural game. And if for every game, well, this is the Ramadan session, I'm telling you. The science of scriptural language, right? Human science and scriptural language. Well, for every game, there's a hierarchy. For every game, there's a hierarchy. This is not Illuminati. This is just making a physical picture for you, right? It's a pyramid, right? So it's hierarchy. So when you talk about hierarchy, so what's at the top of the hierarchy is what is whatever, the most powerful, the most accomplished, the most successful, the most competent, right? So you can also call it a competency hierarchy. Okay, so for every game, there's a hierarchy, right? People are constantly talking about who's the greatest of all time. Is it LeBron? Is it Kobe? Is it Michael? Blah, blah, blah. It's fine. So the point is, that's in the basketball game, right? So then there are certain criteria to decide where you stand on that hierarchy. From the bottom to the top, who's on the top, who's at the apex, right? Well, there are certain standards, qualities, criteria by which that's decided. So the one who is greatest in their ability to check off the boxes, they're the ones that are on the top of the hierarchy. They are the ones that are at the top of their game, right? So similarly, when you talk about scripture, the scriptural game, when you understand the scriptural game, then that means you need to understand, well, what are the competencies that you need to have in order to rise to the top of the scriptural game, meaning scriptural insight, scriptural understanding, etc. Now, Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, so I use the chess model, so I don't know how many, if any, the chess players on there, but names like Boris Spassky and Gary Kasparov and Bobby Fischer and those other things, and women. You got Judith Polgar, the Polgar sisters, which is a very deep story actually with them. Their story is like the Venus and Serena Williams story in terms of tennis aces and the like. But to get back to what we're talking about is that if you can get instruction from them, right, and you can gain from their learning, gain from their knowing. These are the ones that are on the top of the quote unquote chess hierarchy, as an example. So in the same way, at the top of the scriptural hierarchy, scriptural competence, Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi, bar none, is at the top of that. It's at the top of that. Let's just talk about it. And this is not just rhetoric, because he leads us to, I talked about in my last broadcast about having a pick, P-I-C-K. So when you go into a mine, you have the tool necessary to extract the precious metal, to extract the precious gems, because you came in there with the right tool. Okay? It's the same thing with scripture. I don't care. What are you talking about? Not just scripture, scripture and myth. And actually, if you understand the language of Imam Muhammad, when he uses terms like scripture, he's not just limiting himself to people of the book. He's not just limiting. He doesn't just mean Bible or Quran. He includes in that myths and parables, those sacred knowledges that have preserved societies. It would include things like whatever the Buddhist texts are. It would include things like Confucius, because of the fact that you might be surprised to know that the power and the foundation upon which the China right now, post-Mao China, it rests upon Confucianism. Okay, so that lets you know also that it is sacred knowledge. It's sacred knowledge. And so that's also a part of scripture. And what does scripture mean? Something that's been written down. That's what it means. That's what scripture means. Sacred scripture is what has been written down and held sacred by people, right? Okay, so quoting from Imam Muhammad, he said, scripture is giving us figures, right? These are not true people, okay? These are depictions of major dispositions in the souls and natures of people, all right? That's a key. That's a key. So that when you read Abraham and you read, it just doesn't matter. You got Lot, you got Job, man, one of the things I listened to recently, Job, he said, how do you get Job out of J-O-B? When you have a J-O-B, you say job, right? That's job, right? But they tell us to say Job to hide job. And when you look at that, believing and living and surviving what life throws at you, that's a job. And Job is the one that is the model for who does it best. So the idea is not to focus on them as biological, physiological, archaeological persons, right? The Imam told me this, if I can remember the conversation. We were at dinner at a banquet in LA some occasion, and he was talking about the Isra wa Mi'raj just ever so briefly. It was one of the, it is, for as far as our archival records and the like, in my view, that's one of his favorites in terms of subject matter. You have somebody out, no matter how long you talk to them, sooner or later they're going to get back to that subject. Imam Muhammad had that tendency, from my perspective, to get to Isra wa Mi'raj in some way, because in some way, the Isra wa Mi'raj is an encapsulation, an abstract, and I may say some more about that. It is an abstract of the total story. It's an abstract of the whole story of our human evolution, human growth. But what he said that those personalities, and this is when I was really much, quote unquote, greener than I am now. But he had my ear, and mashallah, I was blessed to be in his company. But he said that those names, the names that are used to describe those personalities are not the names of particular individuals per se. But they represent principles or ideas. They represent principles or ideas. And it is that principles and ideas that were embodied by certain people, but they didn't necessarily have those particular names. So that's as much as encapsulating that. So the point is that, so when the Imam said these are not true people, the point is he's saying to us, don't dwell on Don't dwell on the biological. Don't dwell on the physical. Don't dwell on the historical. You really lose the truth when that's what you focus on. But understand this, and this is a part of the whole development, is that if you haven't developed a mind or a cognitive capacity to be able to get beyond the physical, the concrete, well, then that's why you can't go any further into the human sciences and scriptural language, because if you're stuck on the physical, then you can't transcend anything that doesn't pass your evaluation, your physical evaluation, you know. So the point is that those who subscribe to what the Imam has given us as a key, well, we dismiss that. And we don't have a problem with people who want to make it concrete and who have things that they call, you know, scientific certainty that blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Go ahead. That's fine. In the end, you're still going to have to, okay, let's say that is true. And what can I do with that? What does that mean for me in terms of what am I supposed to do with my life? Okay, you found the Noah's Ark and evidence of Noah's Ark on the top of a mountain in Africa. Okay, and what am I'm not saying that somebody did do that. I'm just making a point. So, okay, and what can I do with that? So the important thing is the behavioral expectation that goes along with whatever it is that we're reading or whatever it is that we're saying. Let's finish this quote. So the Imam says the scripture is giving us these, they're not true. They are depictions of major dispositions in the souls and the natures of people. Okay. So see, so Adam is a reality. Jesus and John the Baptist is a reality. Yusuf is a reality. Idris is a reality. Aaron is a reality. Moses is a reality. Abraham is a reality. But we don't focus on the biological aspects. Like one example, certainly from the biblical point of view, I think it said that Moses supposedly described the conditions of his death or something like that. Meaning, it's almost like he's talking after he died. So it's like, if that's true, then how is that possible? How is that possibly Moses? Because the first 5 books are supposed to be from Moses, then how is it possibly Moses? How is he talking after his death, right? So the point is that in the context of the physical, in terms of the physical, it actually traps your cognition. It traps your understanding, and you can't get beyond that because you can't get beyond the physical. So therefore, you can't reach the transcendent meaning that the actual personality, the scriptural personality, actually holds for you if you can only see them in their physical characteristic. But if you learn how to see them as major dispositions in the souls and the natures of people, then you can see that they still live. They still live. Adam is still alive. Jesus, John the Baptist, still alive. Yusuf, Aaron, Idris, Aaron, Moses, Abraham, still alive. And they're coming alive variously in various people at various times, as the soul grows. He loses who neglects it, and and he grows who cultivates it. So that's really what our whole mission is. Our whole mission is cultivating the sacred in ourselves. Let's put it like that. Cultivating the sacred in ourselves. I need to cultivate my Adam. I need to cultivate my Jesus and John the Baptist. I need to cultivate my Yusuf. I need to cultivate my Idris. I need to cultivate my Aaron. I need to cultivate my Moses. I need to cultivate my Abraham. When I get to that point where I'm cultivating my Abraham, then that's good. But if I only think about them in physical terms, then okay, I'm lost because I'm not going to cultivate myself. But that's what God revealed them to us for us to cultivate our own self, because they represent dispositions in our souls and in our nature. So, so then let me go ahead and use this term, abstract. Abstract. Let's just take a couple of seconds on that term itself, abstract. Usually when we hear that word abstract, and let this be an instruction to learn how to grow your vocabulary, even in, if not especially, words that you think you already understand. Expand your understanding of those words, because those words can become cliches, which really mean empty words, if you just use them and use them unconsciously. Not good. Abstract. So abstract is one of them. Abstract, actually, well, at least, and we're just going to focus on those two. Abstract means both concrete and non-concrete. Abstract means concrete and non-concrete. Usually we juxtapose abstract with abstract and concrete, abstract, concrete. Simple principle from Imam Muhammad rahimahullah in his general use of the word. He said, abstract is what doesn't give weight in your hand. Abstract is what doesn't give weight in your hand. So that's a definition of abstract, and that's a definition that the common mind can understand and grasp, okay? So if I say apple, apple is not, and right now, because we're going to go to the other side, apple is not abstract. Why? Because apple gives weight in your hand. Apple gives you, can you hold an apple? Does it have weight? All right, that's an apple. So apple is not abstract. All right. Well, let's go ahead and follow it in the same way. So, but if I say she's the apple of my eye, if I say she's the apple of my eye, is that abstract or is that concrete? Right? That's abstract also. That's abstract because that doesn't give weight in your hand. To say that she's the apple of my eye, it doesn't give weight in your hand. So even though you use the word apple, it's in that case abstract. That is non-concrete. So apple, you can bifurcate the apple. There's a way that the word apple is non-concrete, and there's a way that the apple is concrete. Okay, and so apple is abstract in the non-concrete way when it's used when it's used to say she's the apple of my eye. Okay, at that point, that's abstract in non-concrete. All right, but if I use apple, well, let's go with it. It's not true, but it's one that we've all been exposed to in this society. It said they call it a little knot in the throat of the man. They call it Adam's apple, right? They call it the Adam's apple, right? Why do they call it the Adam's apple? Because we were told in Scripture that Adam and Eve they bit the apple after the temptation of the serpent, Shaitan, what have you. So in that sense, that apple there is we quote unquote, if you're just reading it on the physical level, even though there's no apple in Genesis, there's no apple in there. So it's abstract in that it's pointing to an idea or a principle. It's an object used to refer to an idea. An object used to refer to an idea. So you have language. This is a class, right? Okay, so we're getting instructive in this way. So you have what is called the sign or a symbol, and you have the referent. The referent is what it's referring to. So even the way the popular culture uses the term apple, even though it's not scriptural, but it's been associated with scripture. But since we've been using apple, we'll stay with it. So the apple is a sign. So the apple is a sign. So the apple is a symbol, right? So that's abstract. Signs, symbols are abstract. But signs and symbols are also concrete. I have a quote from the Imam that gets very specifically into that. But so the sign and the symbol, they are abstract. So every sign and every symbol is abstract. Why? Because it's referring to something else. So when you see a concrete, since we're talking about scripture, that's the main object, human science and scriptural language, then when we see something in the scripture that is concrete, key from the Imam is to say, don't think about it as a concrete. That's what he's saying. Don't think about it as a concrete. Camels are mentioned. Don't get stuck on camels. Literal four-legged camels. Don't get stuck on camels. It's pointing to something else. Horses, donkeys, dates, grapes, rivers, oceans, mountains. All these things give weight in your hand, right? All these things are quote unquote concrete. But in scripture, they're abstract. In scripture, they're abstract. So every time you see something concrete, including people, don't think physical. Think abstract, meaning that it's pointing to something. Now, the question is, what is it pointing to? That's the thing. That's the thing. Okay, so also for as far as learning, people who want to go beyond and have more insight into this, you need to study semiotics. Semiotics, semiotics, semiotics. And we won't go fully into details about either. You have symbols, you have icons, and you have indexes. Symbols, icons, indexes. Now, symbol really is like, okay, the Liberty Bell. The Liberty Bell is a symbol. The Liberty Bell is a symbol. I'm looking at signs on Facebook right now where somebody's sending love from their heart. I send it back to you, right? So yeah, that image of the heart. That image of the heart, that is. You could say it's definitely a symbol, but the icon. I mean, having some idea about what the heart looks like, I think I have to use a better example for icon. Let's use the restrooms. So restrooms. When you're in the airport, you're these large malls and what have you, right? You're looking for where's the bathroom? Okay, well. Even if let's say you speak a foreign language, not English, and you're looking for the bathroom, well then you don't have to know what the letters mean. You just look at the icon. There's an icon of the woman, there's the icon of the man. And that icon is something that looks like in round enough of representation to say, oh, that's the woman's. Oh, that's the men. Okay, well that's an icon. Right, that's an icon. So the symbol itself is something that's like I said, the Liberty Bell, right? The Liberty Bell. It doesn't look like liberty. It doesn't look like liberty, but it's a symbol of liberty, right? So there you go. In the Nation of Islam, I think we got a couple of old soldiers in here. In the Nation of Islam, the way the meeting was set up, you go in there, the first thing you see is a blackboard. You see a blackboard with a black man hanging from a tree and an American flag And the American flag, it says symbol of slavery, suffering, and death, right? we was hardcore, boy. Symbol of slavery, suffering, and death, right? So the flag didn't, that American flag didn't mean to us. So it show you how powerful the Imam was just, I don't know, let's just say hardcore. That's kind of putting it light. When he picked up that flag and established New World Patriotism Day, he said, God damn it, if you don't pick it up, God damn it, I'll pick it up myself. And that iconic picture, see, now you want to talk about independence, to have that picture where the Imam is walking across the stage, Elijah Muhammad Mosque, or whatever, Temple Number 2, whatever the name was at that time. I think it was named Elijah Muhammad Mosque. And he walking, and he got that flag is furling, and he walking, stepping with it. But at the point he made that statement, man, that's iconic. You want to know well, that's a symbol of independence. You can do that. There's a statue that the Mormons made to commemorate their great walk from wherever they walked from to Salt Lake. It's a powerful image. If you understand what's behind it, there's a very old man, real Raleigh kind of dude, you know what I'm saying? Hardly any fat on him, but not skinny, like, you know, emaciated, but real Raleigh kind of guy. And he's pushing a cart, and there's a woman with a baby. I think she got a baby on one side and a child in one hand, and it's in motion. It's like, I know when a Mormon looks at that, it's like, it just covers them with the spirit of what we would say, we cannot stop now. It's like they would, yeah. So I'm saying Imam Muhammad, that action on Imam Muhammad's part is iconic and symbolic, right? It means a lot, right? I'm gonna stay with this because you need to understand this. You might also remember a picture, because if you ever saw it, you cannot unsee it, this picture. There was some kind of protest somewhere in America during the 50s. It had to be during the 50s, civil rights movement kind of time. Maybe it could have been the early 60s. I don't know, it doesn't matter. The American flag is involved with this, and there's this white guy with a flag pole, and he's about to literally stab or spear this black man, and the black man he's back, and I can see him now. He's wearing a suit. I think it might even be a triple, what do you call it? A three-piece suit. It's like that. It's almost like he's trying to avoid getting stabbed by. Now here you got this white guy with the flag, which is supposed to be about liberty and justice for all. All men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and we in here having a riot, and you're about to stab me with the very symbol of the thing that you say you stand for and you're trying to protect me with. Now that is iconic, because it is a representation of a situation that in so many ways still exists. But the point is that, you know, technically, formally speaking, a symbol is not the thing itself, right? It's like a rose, right? A rose is a symbol of love, right? Maybe. It can also be a symbol of death, also. And it symbolizes any number of other things. But usually, you know, you see a rose, as a general rule, it's love, right, in this society. So that's a symbol, right? It doesn't look like the thing that you're representing. Love doesn't look like a rose. Love doesn't look, but a rose can represent love. So a rose is a symbol referring to love, right? Okay, so that's a symbol. A symbol doesn't actually look like the thing you're talking about, but it refers to something. It brings to mind a thing that it's been associated with. Liberty Bell, liberty, freedom, America, blah, blah, blah. Flag, patriotism, blah, blah, blah. Patriotism is abstract. The flag is a symbol of patriotism, and so therefore the symbol points to something that doesn't look like it. The symbol points to something that doesn't look like it, right? The icon looks like whatever it is. See, Muhammad Ali, right? You look at Muhammad Ali, it's like the greatest. It's like independence, autonomy, skill, etc. He is what he also does. So therefore he becomes an icon of that. And whatever, you have the Marilyn Monroe, she's the icon of whatever that kind of fatale, feminine beauty, or whatever I'm talking about in the macro scheme of the master narrative. So those people are, Malcolm is an icon, He's a symbol, but he's also is an icon. If somebody wants to say something about whatever, courage and blackness and, whatever, independence, he's a symbol in that way, but he's the icon also of those qualities. But very, very specifically, when you have cars, you're a symbol of cars, a symbol of trucks, bicycles. All those are icons because the bicycle image looks like the bicycle in its broad strokes. A car looks like a car in its broad strokes. House looks like the house. Hotels, you're driving on the roads, gas station, they have a gas pump. Hotels, they have a bed. Blah. Okay, icons. Indexes. Okay, indexes are representatives of unavoidable inferences. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire. So it's like you see smoke, then there's fire somewhere. It's because smoke only comes in terms of something burning. Something is burning. If there's smoke, then there's fire, i.e. something is burning. So that's it. So we use the example of, you have pristine white new fallen snow, and then you see footprints in the snow, right? When you see footprints in the snow, then whatever is connected to what makes those footprints came through there to make those prints, right? So footprints are an index of the presence of whatever the tracks, whoever the tracks are. Okay, it could be deer, bear, human, etc. These are just tracks that show that whatever it is that's attached to what makes this impression has just come through here, or it's been this way. And so those are indexes. So indexes are what you use in order to make inferences, draw conclusions, and the like, right? So just know those three things. Now, when you study semiotics in that sense, then of course you get the broader details of all of that. semiotics, semiotics. There's so far that we can go with that, but I'm not going to go. But let me just throw something at you. And I know we have scholars on here who can make these connections. So I want to give them that, not right, or rather commiserate. Maybe you already know, and so you just say, well, yeah, he's just confirming something that I already know. Good. So any case, so semiotics, right? It's semiotics. So you talk about seminary. What's the relationship between seminary and semiotics? Semen. What's the relationship between semen and seminary? And seminary. Kind of giving it away there. Semiotics, right? Semiotics is the science of signs. That's what it is. It's the science of signs. And then, seminary, semen. You have symbol. Symbol is also in there. Semantics is also in there. And there are a couple of others. So there's one that I'm missing. We'll come to, inshallah. So the Imam. So then therefore, everything you read in Scripture it can be read as either mainly because since you have this crossover between icons and symbols, but since you're reading texts, basically you're reading text, then you're going to actually read something. It's going to get mountain. Okay, you read it, mountain. Okay, mountain. Then here comes the image to your mind about mountain. So you have in your mind the mountain. So the mountain can be a symbol, and it could be an icon, right? In the sense that it represents something like our head. Our head is a mountain, right? You probably in your school days, I said, "Yo, mountain head, dude." I know we used to always talk about people's heads. I won't tell you what people say about my head, because you use it against me. but everybody, you would call people long head, four corners, different kind of names that we have about people's heads. Because the head is a symbol itself. Well, with God, also the head is a symbol of mountain. Jesus Christ, for example, Jesus Christ, according to the biblical reports, it said that he was crucified on Golgotha, and that's a mountain. Golgotha, right? And what's the translation? The place of the skull. The place of the skull, right? So and there's a lot of ways you can go with that, in terms of that. Okay. So much for that. So people are depictions of dispositions. So people are signs in Scripture. People are signs pointing to something, right? So it depends on what the people in the scriptural personality, depends on what they do. Their behavior is telling you who they are. Their behavior is telling you who they are. Whatever they do, they are representing that aspect of our human disposition, our human nature. Whatever they do, they represent that aspect of our human nature and our human disposition. Whatever Adam did is a representation of our human nature and disposition. Whatever Jesus and John the Baptist did, representation of our disposition and our nature, and on up the line, right? That's what they represent. David, Solomon, they all represent disposition and natures of people. So you take that key to the scripture with you and stop reading them from a historical point of view. Let me tell you also what myth actually means. What myth means is truth that is not necessarily historical. Truth that is not necessarily historical. So one of the ways, fables, they talk about fables, right? So you got Aesop's fables, right? So Aesop's fables is, the hare and the tortoise, for example. The hare and the tortoise, they made a bet or whatever, and the rest goes on. So it's like, okay, do you really think historically that a hare, rabbit, talked to a tortoise and then they decide to have this race? No. The myth, the myth or the parable or the fable, all the same in function. What I'm talking about, myths, parables, fables, truths that are not necessarily historical, right? The Willie Lynch letter, right? The Willie Lynch letter, right? The Willie Lynch letter, that's a myth. Yaqub's history, that's a myth, right? But it's a truth. There's truth. There's definitely truth in both of them, but they're not necessarily historical, meaning that there was no guy named Willie Lynch who wrote this letter to the rest of the slave plantation owners. There was no Yaqub born 20 miles outside of Mecca and then played with two pieces of steel, blah, blah, blah. But take the history out of it and look at the principle. And when you look at this is the great and wonderful, we have not yet fully measured or comprehended what the Imam, rahimahullah, what he did for us by interpreting all of that package that Farad Muhammad gave to us. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu Akbar. And we're still indicted by many for not kicking Farad to the curb, what have you, a curb. No, ain't gonna happen. Not with this brother, right? It's not gonna happen. So, Allahu Alam. So, because without what he had done, we could not be where we are right now. It is what it is. It is done. So, I don't know if you need to get over it, but it don't matter. So, I don't need to go down that road. But the point is because of his insight into the reality of our condition and what conditions us and the condition of the world and the condition of the white man, quote unquote, it's like, okay, boom, let me put this together so that, Farad was a satirist, and we're talking about human science and scriptural language, right? And we already told you what scripture is and is not, okay? That is not limited to. Scripture is not limited to the Quran, to the Bible, and whatever, the Torah, whatever. No, scripture is not, like that. It's like, how do we say it? We say every believer is a Muslim, but every Muslim is not a believer. We say every prophet is a messenger, but every messenger is not a prophet. Okay, so I want to put that same parallel on revelation from God. Revelation from God. So every revelation from God is scripture, but every scripture is not a revelation from God. Let's do it like that. Every revelation from God is scripture, but every scripture is not revelation from God. But that means that it's still scripture, but it's not on the plane of God's divine revelation. That's the highest form of revelation. But it doesn't mean also that that is not true. This is another thing that Imam Muhammad explains to you on some other occasion, that what Allah does sometimes, he incorporates in his revelation things that men have come to understand. Men come to a level of understanding, and then Allah incorporates what men understand in revelation. He makes it sacred. Allah, he said, okay, put that in there. Okay? And so, let me see if I can, so many immediate examples. I think I'm trying too hard to pull it out. It's there, inshallah, Allah willing, and it will come back. That is to affirm things that men. Let's use Omar radiallahu anhu as an example, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was whatever, taking a certain position. You can look it up, Google it, what have you, to find the times where Omar disagreed with the Prophet and Allah agreed with Omar, right? So here's a case where Omar came to that state, that position, like people coming too early and staying too long to visit with the Prophet, right? And Omar was thinking that there should be a stop to it, And then Allah revealed in accordance with what Omar said. Or you can even use mujaddala in the context of the woman who argued. Then Allah revealed that she agreed with the woman, that he agreed with the woman who argued. So these are just a couple of small examples in the life of the Quran where man comes to a conclusion and Allah confirms his conclusion. Abraham, alayhi salatu wasalam. Abraham also building the Kaaba, and Abraham built the Kaaba. Allah didn't tell Abraham to build the Kaaba in the way that Noah, as we understand it, was told to build the ark. Abraham, in his understanding of Tawheed and etc., the mission of God for humanity, his clarity about that, about God and about the purpose of God for humanity, he embodied it. And so when we talk about objects and concretes, he embodied that understanding in the Kaaba. He built the Kaaba as a demonstration of his understanding of the whole thing. And that's what Abraham represents. Abraham represents the understanding of the whole thing. What whole thing? The whole thing. The whole thing. The nature of creation, the nature of man, the nature of God's mission for man, the reality of God. Abraham was the first one who got there. So he's the Imam of all the nations, all the people, right? And so Abraham built the Kaaba. Then after the building of the Kaaba, then Allah made it mandatory. Allah revealed the obligation for people to visit the house. So Hajj to the house was going on before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was going on before Muhammad. And then it devolved and it lost the richness and it lost the meanings, et cetera, et cetera. And then here comes Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to put the black stone back in its place, to restore the originality that was lost. Okay, so I'm just saying that to make examples, because Abraham came to that understanding on his own, and he did it. And then God said, "Now y'all go see what Abraham has done. This is what you're supposed to be about." But it wasn't that Allah revealed, build the Kaaba, and then I'm going to tell people to come to where you built. No, he came to the understanding, built it, then Allah said, in confirming it, now it becomes a part of divine revelation. All right, so the point is, while that happens on the level of divine process, right, it also happens on the level of human beings. They get incorporated as sacred matters, and that's the nature of it. All right. Okay, so those individuals, whatever those individuals are doing, that act is actually the abstract given a form to behave and communicate meaning. It's like Yusuf, and what Yusuf goes through, his action, you have to, and here's another meaning for abstract. I'm not going to go all the way back to say, but here's another for abstract. Abstract means to draw out. That's what abstract means. It means to draw out. So you abstracted from this and abstracted from that. Well, those we have a couple of PhDs, maybe a few PhDs, and we have a couple of PhDs online here, alhamdulillah, that, you know, when you do a paper or a professional paper, or rather, I can say, see, I'm not smart enough to know what you call that, a paper to be presented to whatever group of your peers, then you have to have an abstract. An abstract is a part of it. What is an abstract? It's just a kind of summary reference of the whole thing. I mean, I should be able to read this and see if I want to be bothered with the rest of it, right? That's really what it's saying. So you have the abstract, right? And so that's what an abstract is like. Well, what's the essence of this thing? What's the essence of this paper, right? That's the abstract. So it's drawn out, right? Now, even in the word draw, D-R-A-W, draw, and it's something that's drawn out. That's also this one powerful thing to understand. Why? What is Moses' name? Moses' name. What is Moses' name? What does it mean? Moses, when drawn from the water. That's what Moses means, drawn from the water, right? So draw. So abstract also means to draw, right? So if I draw a picture, we use a kindergarten child as a model, right? First grade. Let's make them first grade. First grade child as a model. You ask the child, draw a house. Draw a house. So they have, you know, this kind of fine motor skill to at least be able to hold a pencil, crayon, whatever, and draw. And so they draw a house, right? So they'll draw 2 sticks, and then they draw a pitch roof, and then they'll put a door on it. They may not add windows or anything like that, but they'll have a door. So that's a house. So it's like an icon. It's like an icon of a house. Anybody who looks at it, they will say, yeah, it's a house, right? But question, is it really a house? No, it's not really a house, but it's an abstract of a house. What do you mean abstract of a house? It is the essence of a house. The essence of a house is 2 walls. The ground is the floor. Ard literally means floor, so you don't have to draw a bottom on it. And then it becomes a square or something like that. But in any case, the point is that they draw 2 walls, you know, door, you know, and that's a house. That's the essence of a house, right? If you have those things, you're out in the wilderness and you have those things, you got these 2 walls and assuming 4 walls because, you know, and a door, right? You got a way to get in, right? So it's like, and you got a roof over your head, you got a house. You got a house. All right, so that's enough. So the idea is that that's the essence. So abstract, to draw out the essence. It also means drawing, right? So then drawings are abstracts, right? Cave drawings, right? When you look at cave drawings, you're looking at abstracts. Those are abstracts. But they are pointing to concrete things. They are the essence of the concrete things that they depict, right? Depict. That's some form of picture. It's inside that. Depict. So you have abstract. So you have abstract to draw out the essence of it, and abstract also means an image of the essence of a thing. So abstracts are also icons. Icons are abstractions of something, in the sense like the man and the woman in the restroom iconography. So you have abstract. So to draw out. So that's abstracting. Yeah. So when you say abstract, so abstract is the truth, but without details. It's the truth, but without details. All right. So when you have the picture, you know, since we're talking about symbols, Joseph is kind of like the symbol of symbolic understanding. You look at his life in Scripture, and you can get an understanding about how you grow in that capacity. How you grow. Look at what happened with Joseph, what Joseph had to go through. And when you see what Joseph had to go through, then, and you understand it properly, if you abstract from what's happening with him properly, then you can come to a point where you can learn what his life is revealing, MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. And by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I do have to tell you, it's like what I just said to you, it's like, that's what you can find. It's like, I'm not, you know, look, if I tell you how fiscally comfortable I am, you be knocking on my door asking me for something. So, and I guess it's sort of like, you know, I don't want people to think that, you know, and this is, I guess that is the ego side of it. You know, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to hawk books or sell books, or my livelihood depends on books. No, I wrote those books, and I write these books as a service to the community and the world that I serve, that needs it, that doesn't have it. MashaAllah. I do believe that the reality is everybody's been given something from God. Everybody's been given something from God. Everything I say is no boast. Everybody's been given something by God. And the point is, if you don't bring out of you what God put in you as a gift to serve it up and give it to the society, then the world will never see it. They will never see it. You have to believe that. I mean, it's good for you to believe that. That it's good for you to believe that that there's a special ability. I'm gonna have to get out. My battery is about to die on this thing. Let's see. I'm trying to cover us on this. I don't want you to lose me. I think I'm gonna have to go and get another battery charger, or the Facebook link is gonna die. Hold that point. That's you know, Allah speaks to us in a whole lot of ways. Some side of him saying, man, you don't need to apologize for that. So I'm gonna keep on pushing. I'm gonna come back. I gotta go get a battery. Sorry. Gotta do it.
Don't let me them, Oliver.
Hey, Salaam, how y'all doing, man?
All right, man. How you doing?
All right, I'm hanging in here, bro.
All right, bro. Man, looking good.
Y'all get that picture I sent you?
A cup of fajr.
You get that picture I sent you?
A cup of fajr. Cup of fajr.
I'm trying to see.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Did you get that picture I sent you?
Picture?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
It's the picture. It's the picture he was talking about
I
where that
see
guy was
it.
getting
Yeah, I
hit with
see
the
it.
flag.
I see it.
Yeah, getting hit. That's in Boston.
Oh, wow.
Like our little car going off. Man, I tell you, boy. ET in my house.
If anyone need that book, y'all can see me.
Salaam.
Nice
Okay.
watch.
Wow. That's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah.
America the Beautiful.
Yeah. Faheem is silenced.
Ah, he is? Okay. He has to do it.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
unmuted. I'm
You
unmuted
good.
now.
You good.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on. Anybody have idea how long have I been talking? So let me get some idea of
Hour and a half. An hour. And 15
already.
minutes
Yeah, about an hour and
or less.
12 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and just take a minute to give anybody an opportunity to feedback to me. Any kind of question, maybe? Is this okay to do that right now? If we could
Yes.
do it
Yes.
without problem. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
so
Okay.
so if anybody has any questions or comments pertaining to the talk, please go ahead.
So, Imam, you mentioned, and I thought you mentioned, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well.
Okay, you mentioned that we should not look at these figures and just dealing with the physical thing, just the history thing. We should look further than that.
Yes.
Which is excellent. But you didn't say that those figures shouldn't be looked at. And
Yes.
I've heard it expressed that way, as though they don't exist. There's no reality to that at all.
No, that's a mistake.
Yes,
That's
sir.
So you know, well, you just said it. So I'm glad you brought that point. Let's put it like, let's add to it because it's subtle, right? And you with a PhD, I mean, I know you understand your subtlety. And if when you get to higher levels of knowledge, it's like, okay, yeah, it's that, but it's more than that, right? There's just like Moses and the wise man, right? Moses and the wise man in scripture. I mean, that's the prime example, right? It's like the wise man is telling him, man, you're looking at things too concretely.
Yeah.
And God is telling us that when he said that Moses sought rest on a rock. He said, bring me my lunch, right? He wanted his lunch on a rock, right? No, the rock, you still too materialistic in your thinking. It's not that you're wrong. It's just that you have to find where the two rivers meet. You have to be able to reconcile the abstract and the concrete. When you can do that, now you can walk with me. But until you can do that, you can't walk with me. And it's just, and another thing, the Imam points out to us where it said, if your children ask you for bread, will you give them a stone? Your children ask you for bread, would you give them a stone? That's a statement about the very same thing. It's like, look, I want rational understanding, but you're not going to be able to get rational understanding if you're only stuck on the material side of it. It's like you have to give them bread. You have to give them something rational, right? So yeah, I'm glad you brought that point out. So yeah, one more thing that in line with that is where the Imam says that when you read the scripture, this I take from the Isnad of Imam Progressive Chief Salaam Mu'min, where he said in his conversation with the Imam told him, said, excuse me, when you read the scripture, do the best you can not to go over to the death side, So most people, one of the mistakes they make in reading scripture for understanding in this world is they read things that talk about the destiny. They talk about Yawm al-Qiyamah, they talk about al-Akhir, etc. And they're always thinking about beyond the grave. Saying, you know, why is God just telling us something that its real application only comes beyond the grave? Why? What do we need that for? No, we need what is going to guide our life now, here and now. And that's what hikmah actually means. The wisdom for guiding our everyday life. That's hikmah. So in any case, so the point is, in the same way though, is there life after death? And are these things relevant for life after death? Absolutely. But in order to make your way in this world, you need to learn how to interpret them and find what the behavioral significance is for you in this life. So thank you, Doc. That's very important. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, buddy.
Let me read a question off the Facebook that's over here. It says, so when you speak of Abraham building the Kaaba, are you speaking of the man or the community? Both. So much of the answer. This is another very important thing to understand, which is part of what we're saying right now. It's like if you want to get hikmah, if you want to get somebody's mic is open, blowing back. If you want to get the hikmah, you have to get what relates to how you can make it work in this world, right? The ibadah, we say also, which is also part of actually living in this world, obviously, but the ibadah is actually preparing you for the life that comes after. So there's the hikmah side and there's the ibadah side. The ibadah side is the purification you need in order to get your passport into the paradise. And the hikmah is what you need in order to be successful in this world and achieve in this world what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered for you to do. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ. So in the same way, Abraham, so the Quran says, Inna Ibrahim kana ummah. Abraham was a community. Abraham was a community. So Abraham building the Kaaba is the community building what the Kaaba represents. The Kaaba represents the universal destiny of human beings. So we can build, and we must build where we are, that is represented by the Kaaba, a place where there's no wrangling and no arguing, where there's peace, where there's security, where everyone is treated equally under the law, where God is worshipped alone, etc. All these things can be done in every zip code. And so there can be a Kaaba and should be a Kaaba. Now some people take it, yeah, man, we're going to build us a Kaaba. Yes, so let me get away from that. Okay. So yeah, thank you for the question, Zakir. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Okay, next. Any more comments?
Yeah, I thought I saw Imam Oliver. He had chimed in.
I see him, but he's muted. You still muted, Imam? Can you unmute it? Okay, now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but you must have your phone on also.
Yeah.
I do.
That,
so either mute.
Can you hear me?
That. I hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. The question I have is, where does the concrete ends and the abstract starts? Is it in the application of the concrete?
Okay. Where does the abstract, the first thing that comes to my mind is that really, I think you have to just use the computer
mic
and not the phone mic.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So you have both of those. That is, the first image that came to mind is like hot water. You have hot and cold water. You have the water that runs in your faucet, right? And you want the water to get warmer, right? So versus cold, and then it becomes hot, right? So the stream didn't change. It just moved from one thing to the other, right? So in a similar way, the abstract and the concrete, and I think I've said as much, but now you give me a chance to tighten it up. The abstract is both. abstract is, it's like, abstract is a representation. Oh, okay, here you go. I know you had some FOI time. You did some FOI time, I believe. So it's like, give me Oliver's face again. I want to be able to kind of look at it while I'm talking to him.
Yeah. Fruit.
You got to deal with that echo. That echo is still coming through. Okay, so it said, what do we say? Wise as a serpent, humble as a dove, right? Wise as a serpent, humble as a dove. Okay, that's abstract and concrete right there in one thing, right? Wise as a serpent, the serpent is a symbol, and is therefore abstract, right? And in that sense, because as a symbol, as an existing entity, it's concrete, right? But it's being used as a symbol, so therefore it is an abstract. It's an abstract of whatever we expect from the serpent. From me, it seems like, you got to be able to maneuver and get around in different situations, or you also have to be ready to strike very quickly, so you have to, know how to negotiate and move, etc. And you have to know how and when to strike, right? Humble as a dove, right? So again, take the same attitude, but you're having both in one. You're wise as a serpent, humble as a dove. Okay, so in both of those cases, serpent and dove are concretes. They are concretes, but they are pointing to something that is abstract, which are the principles that you're supposed to execute with your reading, right? You have to read it and then apply it, right? This is one of the processes that or formula that I use: language, logic, sensitivity, as relates to the Imam. Language, logic, sensitivity. So he has his language, but for every language there's a logic, and what that means is a behavioral significance. Logic means a behavioral significance. Logic means that's also another way in the Imam's reading of hikmah, logic. Hikmah is logic. What's the logic? Okay, you read the book, you got the makhraj right, you got the grammar right, you got the i'rab right, you got that right, but what's the hikmah? The hikmah is the behavioral significance that I am to draw from the concrete things that we get from the reading. Okay, so that's the logic. The logic is, how are you supposed to act in light of what you know from the language? The language said this. Okay, what does it mean behaviorally speaking? So it says do this, and then language, like then sensitivities, right? The sensitivity is that you are on the lookout. You are sensitive to whatever that knowledge is telling you about, right? Taqwa. Really, all of that's taqwa. Taqwa is being conscious in the way that God would have you be conscious, being regardful, giving due regard to things. How are you supposed to regard family relations? How are you supposed to regard economics? How are you supposed to regard taqwa? So taqwa is telling us to have the right sensitivities for it, right? And the way we get that taqwa is the language and the logic for a particular kind of, in fact, the sensitivities grow out of the first two. Once you adopt a certain language, then you adopt a certain logic, and then that's going to give you a certain sensitivity, just like people who are quote unquote ecologically conscious, right? Don't bring no plastic around them, or you don't fail to separate the plastic from the whatever, right? That's their, the carbon footprint, the ecology, the ozone. Why? They're sensitive to that. Why? Because of the language, the logic brought them to that sensitivity. Okay, so that's the connection I take from the abstract and the concrete. Once you abstract from whatever you're looking at, you should have the logic, you should have the behavioral significance. And so that's the application. So you apply, after abstraction, you apply what you've abstracted in a concrete way. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know, practically every hadith and everything that we're given as adab in Islam that's a combination of it's like the Prophet says, example, the Prophet says the believers are like one body, right? If one part is suffering, then the whole body stays awake in pain. That's abstract and concrete. Abstract because, you know, we are one body. That's concrete. What's to be abstracted from that we share sensibility, we share sensitivity, we're empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate towards each other. And so therefore, if I see my brother, my sister suffering in some kind of way, then the behavioral expectation is that I do something about it, right? So that's the abstract becoming concrete. But the concrete behavior is in the abstraction, the hadith itself. And that's the idea about Iqra. The idea about reading is we learn how to read the symbols, read the signs, and then translate that into the behavior. Word made flesh, right? Talk the talk, walk the walk. So much. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for your question, Imam. It's good to see you too, man. You look good. Nice and strong. Allahu Akbar. All right.
Great.
I'm waiting if there is another, or I go on. Either way.
Yes, does anybody else want to chime in? Any questions, comments? Yeah, so I want to say something real quick. Allah, he says in the Quran, he says, indeed, we have set forth for mankind in this Quran every kind of parable or metaphor.
Yes.
So for me, when you're talking about abstract things that are not tangible, things that are intangible,
yeah.
Allah is telling us that parables and metaphors help us to understand those things too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
There's something you want to add?
Well, and so when it comes to like faith and things like that, and trust in Allah, all of these things are abstract. We can't touch faith. We can't smell faith. So Allah, He gives us parables, or the Prophet, he gives us parables of what faith looks like. Like for instance, when he talks about trust or tawakkul, he gives us an example of a bird and tells us to look at how the bird leaves his nest and comes back. And he says, look at the bird. And he's giving us a picture of how to trust in Allah, or how to rely on Allah. So Imam Muhammad, he does the same thing. He uses a lot of metaphors and parables and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, the way this is what humanity. It's like, just ever so briefly, Allah, but black magic, white magic, short version. Black magic, white. Black magic is, in essence, let me tell you. Let's get this off anybody's mind. It might be on your mind. Look, I had a two hour broadcast before I came to this broadcast, and we're about an hour and a half into this broadcast, and I can't drink any water, so I've been talking. So don't think Corona when I'm trying to clear my voice, or if I cough or something. Man, the brother might have had a Corona, man. No, I'm good. It's just I can't drink any water to refresh my throat that I've been working for the past 5 hours. But alhamdulillah, so get past that. So black magic and white magic, don't get in trouble by the term, anybody who is. They do exist when you understand them. And this is the understanding that I'm referring to. That is, black magic is someone who has the science of the original human nature, but they use it against the interests of the person. It's not necessarily candles, incense, and whatever, chicken blood and child sacrifice. It's not that. It's language. It's language, and the way that language is used to influence human nature. Wallahi. It's language, and the way language is used to influence human nature. It's the way that people use language to manipulate the belief system and the potential and the capacity that arises out of it, either for or against that individual. Okay, so you have those who have this science, and then they they use it against. They don't inform the people about their nature, but they manipulate them according to their nature while they are ignorant of their own nature, and they suppress the capacity or even the willingness or interest of the person to learn more about their own nature, so that the person who's manipulating the nature can continue to dominate the nature. But on the other side, the quote unquote, let's call it the white man, I am calling it the white magic side of it, is that no, there are people who understand that reality of the original human nature, and they're doing the best they can to enlighten the human being as to that original human nature, to show them and give them the wherewithal to be able to be in the light and not be manipulated in the darkness, because black magic needs you to be in the dark, ignorant of your own nature. And so that's when the ayahs talk about the tagut, the 255 and 256, and I believe 257 is come around, but yeah, 257 is the main one that speaks of it, I believe. And so يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, right? The tagut takes you from the light into the darkness. That's the black side, we seek refuge from the darkness as it extends, as it spreads. So all that to get back to this, that stories are the primary way by which human beings evolve in society. That's one of the reasons why all the buildings that we have in our society, they're built on what? In what? Stories. Stories. 5 stories, 10 stories. The bigger the building, the more stories had to be told in order to get that building built. And who's the one that's on the top? The one in the penthouse. The one that's in the penthouse. It's not because he repented, but he just had more sense about the hierarchy. He had more sense about the hierarchy. He played the game better than anybody else, and so he's apex. He's on the top. But wait, he needs to know the stories. And on each floor, you graduate from floor to floor to floor according to how much you master the stories, right? And so somebody who wants to manipulate people, they manipulate them based on what the person believes about stories, right? You remember the book of Eli? In the book of Eli, the cat, that guy in the Orpheum, or what, I can't remember his name right now. I'm not trying to focus on it. But he really, I need the book. I need the book. Why you need the book? Because if I can get the book, I can make people believe, right? To do what? So I can enslave them easier, better, and with less energy, right? I just tell them it's in the book, right? So why? Because people live on stories. We live in stories. We have this stock language that is used about narratives and master narratives, etc. But there's such a cliche when you don't understand that the scientific reality of the narrative. If I know your narrative, I don't have to believe in your narrative. I don't have to share your narrative. But if I know your narrative, then I can manipulate you. Now, let's go back to Farad. Farad, he understood the narrative of the so-called sleeping mentally dead Negro lost in the wilderness of North America. He knew that. He had genius. And I think he took a page from, here's an example, perfect way to point it out. H.G. Wells. There's a picture online of H.G. Wells, and if you have a picture of Farad, you look at that picture of H.G. Wells, and you look at that picture of Farad, and if you can't see that Farad is emulating H.G. Wells, well then you still have some growing to do. I'm talking about hairstyle, the book, the mustache, everything, and that's him giving a sign, iconic symbol, because whereas we have social media now, TV now, radio, etc., the novel was the thing at the turn of the 20th century. That was what the elite people read and the power holders read and what they lived through. So Farad was a satirist. He's a satirist, as was Jonathan Swift and H.G. Wells. But H.G. Wells, I'm focusing on him because H.G. Wells, most of what Farad had from a story perspective, you can find it in several of H.G. Wells' writing. And one of them one of them, which cinched it for me, I've been talking on the other side, I've been talking about al-haq, talking about reality, and we're talking about ikhlas and khalas, and it ends the argument. For me, what ended the argument that if somebody argued that what Farad Muhammad did was like what H.G. Wells did, he used H.G. Wells as a model for his myth making. All right, you have the Isle of Dr. Moreau. Okay, that's Yaqub's history, period, boom. The Invisible Man, that's also inside the Yaqub's history motif, because when you get to the conclusion of the story, you'll see that it was all about race, skin color, et cetera, et cetera. That's H.G. Wells. But a very less well-known, really generally not known at all, unless you're looking for it among us and here and now, is The Door in the Wall. The Door in the Wall. It's a small, short story that was done by H.G. Wells. And if that story is not the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Wallace D. Muhammad, well then I'm not an African-American Bilalian male, I'm telling you. The Door in the Wall. You go find that story, you read it, and you look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the father, and you look at Imam W.D. Muhammad as the son, in the nature of that story, and that's it. So the point is, going back to stories. So he gives us Yaqub myth. He gives us, man, he worked on that thing. And it was a perfect fit. And that's why we say Allah blessed him with it and blessed us with it. Now we know there are people who just don't get it. Man, y'all tripping, bidah, whatever. Okay, whatever. You know, it's like some people, you ain't got time. I can't, if you don't get it, then you're just not blessed to get it. And you don't have to have been a part of the Nation of Islam in order to get the benefit of the blessing. I didn't live in Mecca and Medina in the 7th century. Am I not still getting the blessing from it? I'm not an Arab. Am I not still getting the blessing from it? You know, Malcolm said, you can put kittens in the oven, that don't make them biscuits, right? Malcolm is tough, man. Okay, but I'm in America. I am still getting the benefits of what America allows. What at that point, the much benefit is available. I have access to it. We know about all the other stuff, but the point is that I'm not born of the daughters of the revolution or what have you. But hey, I'm getting my share of what's going on. And so people make the mistake of cutting off Imam W.D. Muhammad and that language that evolved out of his evolution from what Farad brought, from what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did, and so they still make the mistake of thinking that we are the same as we were then because we still hold them in honor. Now, if you understood the science of the nature and it's like the inevitable necessity of something like that to solve the problem. And when I say something like that, which gives us the final epiphenomena of Imam W.D. Muhammad, which severs the umbilical cord of that as a formal, all that's afterbirth now, mashallah. But you reverence the wombs that bore you. Okay, I'm getting too rhetorical right now. But that's where I'm at. So all that responds to your question about, or your statement with regard to stories. And see, this is why, well, I gotta go on. This is why Bilalian is the name. The Bilalian is the name, right? Because inside, well, let's take advantage of this. Let's take advantage of this as a lesson in human science and scriptural language, right? So we talk about language, right? And so I'm back to the session now. I'm not taking any questions, if that's all right. I'm just gonna go on. Okay, Bilalian. This is very good for us to understand too. Bilalian. So you still got people calling Black Muslim, man. Black Muslim, man. Talk about turning the clock back. Moving on. But let's deal with narratives, right? Narratives, right? And stories and myths. and archetypes. All these words are critical for all this. Myth, story, archetypes, narratives. I'm telling you, I believe it's necessary in order to be in the right state, frame of mind, the right intellectual perception about what I'm speaking to right now of Bilalian versus black. I know for some of us, okay, it's a done deal. I don't have no issues with that, but there are many, I don't know, it could even be millions of Muslims who still equate and relate black to Muslim. So every Muslim who is a quote unquote African American is a black Muslim, as though it's an honorific term, you know. That's black magic. I've talked about that before. That is black magic. But in any case, so okay, but the idea you have archetypes, right? We talked about the personages in scripture, right? So now change language. Archetypes, archetypes, right? Archetypes. So when you have Adam is an archetype, Jesus and John the Baptist is an archetype, Yusuf is an archetype, Idris is an archetype, Aaron is an archetype, Moses is an archetype, Abraham is an archetype. What they represent is or are an abstraction of a set of values. That's what an archetype is, and many other things also. I know with respect for all the PhDs that are online. The archetype are the embodiment of a set of principles. An archetype is the embodiment of a set of principles. Adam, an embodiment of a set of principles. Jesus, John the Baptist, on up the line of the Isra and Mi'raj, they all are the embodiments, the personification, that's also another thing, that is principles given, you know, an abstract image or existence, embodiment, right? Embodiment, personification of what? Principles, values of a certain type. Moses embodies a certain type of principles or a certain set of principles. Idris, a certain set of principles. Aaron, a certain set of principles, and all the rest of them. Okay, so all archetypes, that's what archetypes are. Archetypes represent the embodiment of a certain set of principles, okay? So it's not, that's just, okay. Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. Why is the capital of our nation Washington? Why, how come it's not Edison, D.C.? You know, how come it's not, you choose anybody else? Jefferson, D.C. Why? You know, it's Washington, D.C. And Washington, George Washington was the first president. And you're the famous picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware, right? There's another icon, another symbol, right? That people who gaze upon it are supposed to be drinking in the values that it embodies, right? So George Washington is an archetype, right? And he's on the $1 bill. You think that's the cheapest one? No, it's not the cheapest one. He's on the $1 bill because that's our prime principle. He's an archetype of our primary set of values. You know, how far they have fallen, right? So in any case, and one of the parables, fables of the principle that is to be embodied by George Washington says that George Washington chopping down a cherry tree, right? He said, I cannot tell a lie. See, that's a part of the narrative. That's a part of the American narrative that is embodied in part by, that is one of his attributes is he's honest and truthful, etc. Right? So it's I cannot tell a lie. So he's an archetype of truthfulness. He's an archetype of courage. He's an archetype of perseverance. You know, Valley Forge. You know, all that. See, that's the American narrative, right? And that's what happens with every archetype holds a narrative, right? So when you talk about people's names, right? Go back and look at the original name for China. Where did China get its name from? You know, now Africa, we got issues, with the whole African thing. You can look that up, but it's not. How can you say? Frankly, the name itself doesn't ensure, doesn't communicate any particular. The name itself doesn't particularly represent, because the Africa that's there, we talk about Leo Africanos, Scipio Africanos, all the rest of it. It's like, I mean, really? It's like, is that really? I mean, okay, we got all the rest of that, El Kebalan and all the rest of that. It's fine. The point is that Africa as a label, I'm talking labels, right? That, okay, what's the archetype? What is it embodying? What is it personifying? I mean, in and of itself, because if you got to go past the letters in the word and find the personality connected with that name, then what you're going to come up with? Are you going to come up with a black man? Or are you going to come up, quote unquote, or are you going to come up with a white man? So hold up. You mean to tell me that the whole continent of quote unquote dark-skinned black people, whatever, they're named after a white man? It's like, and that's right. And that's meaning that's proper. It's proper. So we say that the label should fit the content. The archetype should be something that shares, that communicates to you, this is what you should do in order to make it in the world. That's what really an archetype is designed to do. This is what you should do in order to make it in the world in this aspect, right? Whatever. Steve Jobs may be the archetype for creative genius. Who knows? And anybody else, there's archetypes for everything. Frederick Douglass is our archetype for whatever you can find. Harriet Tubman, she's an archetype for whatever. Claire Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, W.D. Muhammad, they're archetypes. But when we're talking about a whole people, then the archetype should carry the principles, the values, the ideals that on one actually describe the people, and on the second level provide guidance for the people to emulate. Here's a word: isomorphism. 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 So iso is taking in. So I know we have people who are readers of scripture, and they understand about exegesis. Exegesis is taking out, reading out from the scripture. Eisegesis is reading into it. That you don't want to do that when you're reading scripture. In your objective is to be honest. Then you don't do eisegesis. You don't read into the scripture. It's not there. What are you reading into it? It's not there. Exegesis is to bring out what's in there. So that's exit, right? Exegesis, bring it out. Right? Exoskeleton, skeleton on the outside. Exa is to bring out. So exegesis, bring out. Just look at it. We call it tafsir, okay? To bring out what's in there, right? Eisegesis is reading it. Okay. Isomorphism. So iso is something coming in. Morphism is the form, right? Is the form. Morph is the form, right? So isomorphism it's in the nature of the human being to be informed, right? To be formed on the inside by something from the outside. That's what happens, right? Human beings grow and evolve on what's called the model imperative. The model imperative. And the model imperative, it basically means that you give me the model, I emulate the model, or imitate. Emulate is better. For children, imitate is what they do. For adults, we have to learn how to emulate. So many, those who fall into this trap, they haven't learned how to emulate the prophet and the companions. They only do what they think is imitating the prophet. So that's why you see them wearing sandals in the Bronx. Shout out to my brother Abdul Wahid. They're wearing sandals in the Bronx in the wintertime. He was saying this is the sunnah, mashallah. So you're not emulating, you're imitating, right? So you get all dressed up and like, this is what the prophet and the companions looked like. That's a problem. That's a problem. Okay. But moving from that, so the idea is to isomorphism. So an isomorphism is that we live and grow by the model imperative. And this model imperative means that you give me a model, say I can't be what I cannot see. That's part of the language that goes with that. How do you say motivation? It's like I can't be what I cannot see, so we have to provide a model. And we know Quran tells us in 2:143, it said that you have been made a model community, ummatun wasata. You have been made a model community, so you will be a witness over the people, and the prophet will be a witness over you. That means that they're supposed to model themselves after you, and you're supposed to model yourself after the prophet. What is that? Isomorphism, meaning we have the prophet, and then we're supposed to emulate the values that are projected from him. So he becomes an archetype. He becomes a model, a personification. He's the word made flesh, right? And so we're supposed to draw from him, abstract, right? Abstract from him his behavior. By the grace of Allah, we have hadith, sirah, sunnah, etc. written down so that you read it, and then the isomorphism takes place. The information takes place. And so therefore, that's what archetypes do. Whether you talk about myth, parables, or whatever, Hercules, Psyche, Sybil, whoever these mythical characters are, they're not true, real, historical figures, but they are the embodiment, the personification. They are archetypes of certain set of principles, values, algorithms, behaviors, etc. that you're supposed to use under certain circumstances. And if they are right and true to the situation, one of the ways you know if they're right or true, how long have they lasted? How long have they lasted? And what is the society that draws on them? Look at the society that draws on them, and how successful are the societies that draw on them, taking them as their model, as their archetype. Well, then it must be pretty good. It works for them, right? So it depends. But here's the beauty of what we have. Allahu Akbar. The beauty of what we have, listen to what Allah says. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He says for all, he said for any who believes in Allah and the last day. No, for whoever believes in the last day and remembers Allah much, right? So it's like, so Muhammad, just like Abraham, Muhammad, the same thing is said about Abraham also, so Muhammad and Abraham are archetypes. They are archetypes based on our nature for isomorphism, which just read more of the prophet, read more about Abraham, drink in their values, their principles, their behavior, their sunnah, if you will, and then you get formed on the inside in that way. All right, archetype. So let's go back to Black and Bilal. Black and Bilal. Somebody said, no, I'm a black man. Okay. So tell me, okay, since archetypes are what form people on the inside, okay, and you say you're black, okay, so what model are you using to form yourself on the inside as drawn from that label, black? Okay, just simple. So who is your archetypal black man, right? Frankly, it don't matter who you pick, because if you like them not because they're black. You like them because of who they are and what they are and the principles and the values that they execute. That's what you need to identify with. Whatever. If you want to be black and Malcolm, you want to make Malcolm your archetype, then call yourself a Malcolmite. I'm a Malcolmite. Don't say you're black. Just say I'm a Malcolmite. Right? Elijah Muhammad is your model. Don't call yourself black. Say I'm an Elijah Muhammadite or something. It's like, no, I'm a Muslim. Well, that's good. If when you say Muslim, you really mean where that word comes from, because that word wasn't born in the Bible, and that word wasn't born in Message of the Black Man. That word was born in the Quran. You're called first here in the Quran, right? So it's like, if you're a Muslim, okay, well, there you go. All your principles are in there. So just call yourself Muslim, right? Because there's only one quote unquote kind of Muslim, but you have your ethnic representation of it. But black is not an ethnicity. Black is not an ethnicity. right? Okay, let's cut to Bilal. Bilal is an archetype. Bilal is an archetype. And not only is he an archetype, he's a perfect embodiment of all that we are, were, and should be. Say it again. Bilal, he's an archetype and a symbol of all that we are, were, and should be. I'm not going to even go through it. There's enough people on this line to understand the story of Bilal is our story. That's our narrative. Bilal is our narrative. Everything about him, everything, especially Muslims, right? So it's like, adapting Bilalian as our name, it corrects the whole identity issue. I mean, it wipes it clean, totally, right? And I guess, since if you don't know by now, that's what my next book is about, inshallah. It's like that whole argument, and with the history that goes with it. Make dua for me on this. This is no boast. I don't want to destroy my own possibilities by putting it out in the wrong way or having the wrong spirit behind it. But if you feel what I'm saying right now, I think you may have a sense of how important that is. Well, that's my sense of it. All right, it's 12:57.
I didn't want to cut in, but
no, sorry, I'm done.
So the Zoom is going to cut us off at 4 o'clock. So we just want to say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you, Imam Faheem Shuaibe, or Sheikh Faheem Shuaibe, for your presentation. And if you guys want to get more in-depth information, please get the book. And the book is The Clear Path to Human Development, Human Science in Scriptural Language. Okay?
Yeah. You can go to I think it's a clearunderstanding.institute, I believe. That's about, or Amazon. Yeah, Amazon. Yes. You can go straight to Amazon. That's probably quicker if you go with Amazon. Yeah.
Abdul Wahid, you go. That's even quicker.
Oh yeah. Hey, my bad. Hey, look, let me tell y'all something, just in case you don't know. Abdul Wahid was one of the first to invite me out the house. And I came over to the Bronx, Woody Crest over there, and rocking with the big boys over there in the Bronx, alhamdulillah. And we've been tied together ever since. So alhamdulillah, it's good to hear your voice. And yes, thank you for your continued undying support, my dear brother. Alhamdulillah.
So so the Zoom is about to cut off, but again, Ramadan Mubarak, and I hope everybody has a blessed Ramadan, and hopefully we will see each other soon, inshallah. Inshallah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you so much, Imam, for what you gave us today.
Alhamdulillah. Shukran jazeelan.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.